Firstly, what is an employment contract? Well, just like any other contract, it's a legally binding agreement between two parties. So the employment contract is just that. It doesn't have to be in writing. No contract does. It's just an agreement. Now, obviously, when things are in writing, it makes things a lot easier, and we'll talk about that shortly. But fundamentally, that's what we're talking about when it comes to an employment contract. So if a contract doesn't have to be in writing, what are the terms that make it up? Because this is it. So many people tell me they don't have a contract of employment. You do. If you are exchanging your labour for wages, there is a contract of some sort in place. And therefore, we need to understand what makes that up. And ideally, as the employer, you want to set out right from the start what it is that makes that contract up and why that contract is what it is, what's part of it. So when we're looking at a contract, what is it that incorporates? And there's four main types of terms that come into a contract of employment. Firstly, you've got your statutory terms. These are things like your right to 5.6 weeks holiday, statutory minimum holiday. You've got some statutory notice periods in there. You've got statutory sick pay. So it's those things that are legal entitlements as part of the contract and are written into legislation. We cannot contract people out of those statutory terms. Doesn't matter what you write in the contract, it's irrelevant. Those statutory terms are going to be your minimum. You can go over and above the statutory minimums, but you can't write people out of them. So those are your foundation. They are there. You've then got your express terms. Now, your express terms are the terms that have been expressly agreed between the two parties. Ideally, this is going to be in writing, so we know exactly what those express terms are. Because when we've also got their implied terms, now many people go, oh, the express terms are the ones in writing, the implied terms are the ones that are not in writing, and that's not strictly true. So your implied terms are those terms that come about because it's an expectation, usually a common law expectation. So things like the implied term of trust and confidence, the implied term that an employer will provide a safe working environment. These are generally your implied terms of the contract. We don't tend to write these in anywhere. You've also got custom and practice. And your custom and practice being the things that are, oh yeah, of course we do that. Everyone knows that. These are the things that are long-term, well-established. Everybody knows this is what happens. It's expected. There's no breaks in it. So if, for example, you give out a Christmas bonus every year, not written down anywhere, you've been doing this for 20 years and people just expect to get that bonus. It's paid in the December pay and you've not paused it at any point, then that's going to be custom and practice. People are going to expect to get that. Of course, we get the Christmas bonus. If, however, you pay it for a few years and then you don't pay it for a couple of years and then you do pay it, it's much less likely to be custom and practice. The issue, of course, is that when these things come about through custom and practice or because they're implied, they're much harder to be specific about. And in theory, no implied term can outweigh an express term. Actually, it's not just in theory. I mean, legally, that's the status of it. An express term will override an implied term. But that is not to say that a written term will override an orally agreed term. If something is agreed expressly between the two parties, whether in writing or not, that's going to be an express term of the contract. So it's much better to have those things in writing and so get the foundations right, because otherwise you find yourself agreeing express terms of the contract as you go along that you didn't necessarily intend to. And you might reflect back a few months later and think, oh, I didn't actually intend to agree to that change in their contract, but they came and asked me one day and I just said, yeah, that's fine, and didn't really think about it. And now it's a problem, and how do I deal with it? And that's why understanding the foundations is so important to getting things right across your business, to making sure that you think about as an employer, what are the agreements that I want to get into with my employee? Do they work for my business? Is this really what we want? And when you sit down and put things in writing, that's often when we really think about, is this really what I want? Is this doing what I need it to do? And therefore making sure that our express terms are explicit, that they're really clear, that everybody knows. And of course, when they're in writing, we can look back on them and say, yeah, that is what the parties agreed. Now, that said, if you've got something in writing and that isn't what is happening, then it may well be looked upon to say, well, actually what's in writing is a farce. That isn't what the parties genuinely agreed to. That isn't what either party had an intention to be doing, and therefore it's meaningless. So just because something is in writing doesn't automatically mean it's the be all and end all, it's the express term that can't be overwritten. It is around the overall, and an employment tribunal will always look at the reality, what's happening in reality over and above what is explicitly there in writing. Welcome to HR for non-HR managers. If you are a people manager, a business owner, or perhaps you work in HR and you're looking for a more practical application of employment law, then this course is absolutely for you. I'm going to take you through every step of the things you need to know to build up the foundations to be able to manage your team really effectively and keep your business safe. I've devised this course in a way that takes you through each of the foundational pieces as you need them and puts together the building blocks that you need. Look forward to seeing you throughout the course, and good luck.